hit like and subscribe. You're watching the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel.
Peace, family. This is your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School. Every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we host Night School, where we break down the most controversial subjects, the most engaged debates, the most interesting subjects going on in the world today. And tonight is no different. We got a few stories that we want to get to today. I apologize. I'm not feeling well at all. I'm very under the weather. I think it's just a bad cold. I've been taking all the tests and stuff. It looks like it's nothing major. At least it based on what it's not. But I feel awful. I got a terrible cough and I need rest. Unfortunately, the world ain't set up that way. So we're gonna keep grinding for a few more minutes, and I am going to try and get a few hours sleep before I catch a ridiculously early morning flight. Let's get to it. Let's get to it, y'all. Important stories going on in the world today. But I think the most important thing, or at least the hottest thing going on in the world today, is this story about Jimmy Kimmel. I could not believe this. ABC has suspended Jimmy Kimmel's late night show indefinitely following comments that Kimmel made about Charlie Kirk's killing. This comes after Kimmel suggested during his show last night that the accused shooter was a pro-Trump Republican. ABC's decision comes after media company Nexstar, I think you've heard that name before, announced that its ABC affiliates would be preempting Kimmel's show. Earlier today, the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission chair, threatened to take action against Disney and ABC over Kimmel's comments. Kirk, of course, was fatally shot while hosting an event at Utah Valley University last week, and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer slammed the decision, like many of us have, to suspend Jimmy Kimmel's show. Schumer called it outright outrageous, saying it doesn't matter if you agree with Kimmel or not, that he has the right to free speech. I have thoughts on that. We'll talk about that. Meanwhile, the White House responded to the news through its rapid response account on X. The post reads, "They're doing their viewers a favor. Jimmy is a sick freak." Keep it classy, White House. The president weighed in on Kimmel's show and its indefinite suspension on a different social media platform, Truth Social, the official platform of the White House, maybe, calling it, quote, "great news for America." He said that ABC finally had the courage to do what had to be done. He also called out two other late night show hosts, Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers, saying that they have horrible ratings. That's his go-to move. Anyway, in July, CBS announced that the Late Show with Stephen Colbert would end in May of next year. So we're seeing an interesting pattern. The question is, how do we make sense of this pattern? What's the right decision, and what might an alternative be to these decisions? Joining me to help make sense of all of this is Dr. Treva B. Lindsay. She is a professor of women and gender studies at the Ohio State University. She's also the author of multiple books, including America Goddamn, which is my favorite book of hers. Anyway, Dr. Lindsay, thanks so much for joining us. I think you are. Let's see.
Thank you for having me, and I hope you feel better soon, sir.
Thank you. It's been a few days of sick. I had a sick kid yesterday, but he's also gotten me sick, and he's a terrible person.
Oh, gosh. Well, little people tend to be vectors of infections and viruses, and they love on you, so you get their little love bugs. That's
yes. If sneezing in my mouth is loving on me, I don't want to be loved. Anyway, what do you make, first of all, of this Jimmy Kimmel situation? This was shocking to me. I got to tell you, I've seen a lot of things in this political moment, and I've seen a lot of repression in the Trump administration. But shutting down Jimmy Kimmel seemed excessive to me.
I think it seems excessive given what was actually said by him. But I think more importantly, when we look at the bigger picture of what's happening, they're going to be running a Charlie Kirk remembrance special on the slots on ABC platforms in lieu of his show airing this upcoming week. We see that there's also some business dealings behind this with regards to ABC, other corporations. We've seen this direct repression of the press. And also, let's be honest here about mainstream media's normalizing of what we're seeing, so that when something like this happens and people want to feign shock, and we've seen these ripples in the water well before this, and now it's reaching rich, powerful white men, that now we have this response that seems to be this telltale, oh, this actually might be state level repression. This is something other than just cancel culture. When we think about this in this culture war conversation, I think what we're talking about and what we need to be clear about and intentional in the way we talk about it is state repression, that this is the state intervening and having a direct impact on comedy on a night show that has nothing to do with news. Jimmy Kimmel by no means is some like progressive dynamic person,
Right.
If we're thinking about this.
And his comment wasn't particularly radical. Here's what he said in his opening monologue on Monday. He addressed the killing of Charlie Kirk by saying, quote, "We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it." That was it.
I think, but we've also seen people who have been attacked for literally saying things Charlie Kirk said, like using his own words and being like, this is what he said. And like, that's offensive. You can't say that. And it's like, but he said it. And so in this moment, when we actively see people who identify with MAGA, who identify as part of the right, saying various things to try and do all of these mental Simone Biles level gymnastics around who this killer might be, who he is, and why he did what he did, there is this incredible kind of sense of, really, guys, we really gonna do this? So Jimmy Kimmel simply identifies that, and that becomes something worthy of being repressed, because it is calling out something that is happening, that it doesn't matter that it's factual, it doesn't matter that there's receipts on receipts on receipts. If you can create the illusion of, you all are doing this thing and we still are the party of free speech, so here we go.
It was shocking to me. Brendan Carr, who is the chairman of the FCC, again, the Federal Communications Commission, jumped in this. I know the FCC is always political. All organizations, all departments, all institutions are political. But I was a little surprised that he was so vocal in saying how outraged he was at what Jimmy Kimmel said. In specific fashion, he went on a right-wing podcast and said that Jimmy Kimmel's remarks were, quote, part of quote, a concerted effort to lie to the American people. He also said that the FCC was going to have remedies that we can look at. And here's the part that really bugged me out. He said, frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Again, he's on a right-wing podcast, Benny Johnson's. He said, these companies can find ways to change conduct and take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead. So he basically said, if networks, if y'all don't do something, we're going to do something.
Right.
That was a bit scary. I mean, he encouraged network affiliates to push back, to use his language. He said, frankly, I think it's really sort of past time that a lot of these licensed broadcasters themselves push back on Comcast and Disney and say, listen, we're going to preempt. We're not going to run Kimmel anymore until you straighten this out. Again, I see how someone could have their own feelings about what Jimmy Kimmel said. I don't think he said anything particularly important to the conversation. I don't think he said anything particularly provocative or unsettling. I think he damn near stated the obvious. But it doesn't feel outside of the Overton window. It doesn't feel outside the boundaries of normal political speech. Why do you think this triggered people or triggered them the right so much?
I think they're just looking at who they believe the audience to be. They're trying to create a particular narrative that's running again to be able to justify other kinds of actions, to justify other kinds of censorship. This fits into a larger political discourse in which we're seeing the stifling of speech on college campuses, what can be taught in our classrooms, how we can engage, how we can protest, how we can resist. And so this just feels like part of that. It doesn't feel separate from the moment that we're in, this historical moment that is so egregious and overstep and overreach, and saying we care about free speech. No, actually, we care about the speech that says that what we want to say, the narrative that we want to push. So when you have another person on a news channel, on Fox News, talking about lethally injecting unhoused
We're gonna go there next. So yeah.
That's just an apology. That's all that's necessitated in the wake of 12 people being injured in encampments of unhoused people in the United States. It's not even hypocritical at this point, because the hypocrisy is what I think is alarming for some people. But what it is for me is just like, we're just seeing how far we can go, how far we can push. So even reading media outlets that are saying that this is in response to Kimmel's comments about Charlie Kirk, and his comments are literally about how people are responding about the suspect in Charlie Kirk's murder.
Right.
Like it again.
I agree with you. I think that this is sort of an index of just how far off the ranch we've found ourselves. Jimmy Kimmel had about a year left on his contract, a little less. We just saw Stephen Colbert basically be shut down, not renewed over there. I'm wondering how much of this is just a convenient excuse for networks to just scale back what they already don't want to be doing. Part of that is getting rid of late night TV, late night talk shows. I mean, it seems like that is a relic of the past that we're never going to see again. And how much of it is, of course, the political silence. I mean, I'm not breaking any news here to say that Stephen Colbert is himself disliked by the right for his commentary and his analysis. So I'm wondering how much of this is about feigning outrage and how much of this is a part of a deeper, not just political calculation, but also a kind of economic one, a market-based one.
Absolutely. I think that's right. I think that's why you're getting some of the conversation from the White House about ratings and all of this, which is, as you said, a good go-to for Trump, despite that not really bearing out in the same way I think he would like to. Obviously, these are hosts that still remain popular with their audiences. But I think what's important in that moment is that you see them. Networks are getting a green light to do the things that I think they wanted to do anyway, and getting the green light to create the kinds of platforms, streaming, et cetera, that they want to do, that they think is going to be revenue generating. And that for them, now that they're in this entanglement, deep in this entanglement with the White House and with the Trump administration writ large, how to comply with that and overly comply with that in advance of these kinds of attacks. Because that sounds like a mob threat to me. If you don't handle it this way, there's another way this can be handled. I know what that is, right? Like, I know what that is, mob side more particularly, but also just thinking about, right, just gangland level violence. And I think that that is the terms under which we need to be talking about this, and that the media needs to report this.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the media is sort of uniform in saying, this is awful, this is wrong, something must be done. They're focused on the free speech part of it. And this is a stunning assault on free speech. Part of me wishes that they would also be like, come on, y'all, let's not pretend that this shit was outrageous. Because part of the defense is we have to protect all free speech no matter how outrageous it is. I mean, that's basically
it wasn't outrageous.
Right. Can we actually take a political stance here and say, hey, he didn't say shit? I mean, if we can lower the flags, right, to have mass for Charlie Kirk, if we can have tribute specials for a guy who was wildly controversial, polarizing, and in my estimation, deeply racist, among other things. Like, we can't. I don't know. I'm frustrated by where we are.
Yes.
Are we shooting ourselves in the foot long term by only talking about the free speech of it and not making an actual values argument here?
Yes, I would agree with you. We have to have a much deeper and more direct conversation about what this means in terms of state repression, that we have to sit there and say repeating facts is not outrageous speech that needs to be protected. the concession that saying what someone said or identifying something that has occurred as being outrageous sets the bar on the floor and means we're always going to be tripping over it, attempting to assert anything that is any semblance of just or free or approaching this kind of First Amendment thing. I think relying solely on the First Amendment here leaves us in a corner where we're having to defend it on a grounds that we've already conceded that something is wrong with what he said, or it may offend you what he said. It's like, it's offensive to say a fact.
Right. And that's where I'm at with it. It's like, how is this where we are? People are outraged and offended. I mean, again, people are getting fired from jobs, as you pointed out, simply for posting Charlie Kirk's own words.
Yes.
I don't get it.
Can we say that? Can we name that and be outraged because the repetition of facts, the identifying of facts is costing people their livelihoods, or putting people at risk for real threats and real dangers. And of course, it's not.
Well, let's talk about that, because we got another story I want to get to, and you just gave me the perfect segue. In Minneapolis, 7 people were shot late Monday night at a homeless encampment in the Longfellow neighborhood. 3 are in critical condition, including 2 people who were shot in the head. Police say it was the second mass shooting of the day along East Lake Street, both involving multiple gunmen. The violence comes just days after Fox News host Brian Kilmeade drew national outrage for suggesting, quote, involuntary lethal injection as a solution for homeless individuals with mental illness. On a September 10th segment of Fox and Friends, Kilmeade said quite literally, quite directly, and quite bluntly, just kill him. Here are his exact disgusting words.
Is necessary. You can't give them a choice. Either you take the resources that we're going to give you, or you decide that you're going to be locked up in jail. That's the way it has to be now.
Or involuntary lethal injection or something. Just kill them.
Yeah, Brian, why did it have to get to this point?
Right. I would say this: we're not voting for the right people. In North Carolina, wake up.
I'm gonna play that again. I want y'all to listen to this again.
A lot of them don't want
I need y'all to hear this again, because it's so crazy. And look at how they just were not moved by it, including the nigger on the left.
You take the resources that we're going to give you, or you decide that you're going to be locked up in jail. That's the way it has to be now.
Or involuntary lethal injection or something. Just kill them.
Yeah, Brian, why did it have to get to this point?
Right. I would say this: we're not.
It's the mental health and the homeless population. A lot of them don't want to.
Just kill them. I mean, deadpan.
Oof.
I mean,
the lack of reaction from the other,
right?
Like, all around mortifying. I mean, we've gotten and normalized genocidal language being used and seeing that all the time, whether we're talking about here in the U.S. or in Palestine, like the normalization of the way that we imbibe that. And then that's a news item and an apology. And then we moved on, and yet now we're talking about a host being fired for saying a thing that exists.
Right.
It is nutting. It is so deeply inhumane and cruel. And it's completely washed over as though this man did not call for the murders of people.
It's absolutely stunning. And his comments were delivered during a discussion about a high-profile murder case in Charlotte involving a homeless suspect. And of course, it spread quickly online, and the comments were met with condemnation, including a biblical rebuke from California Governor Gavin Newsom. Kilmeade, as you pointed out, apologized yesterday, but you can't put toothpaste back in the tube. The damage in this case has been done. Now, I'm not blaming Kilmeade for what happened at the encampment on Monday, but I'm saying it's part of a tenor and a tone that we see all around the country in the wake of Monday's 2 mass shootings inside of the Minneapolis encampments. By the way, city officials are moving to forcibly shut down the site where dozens of unhoused people have been living. Mayor Jacob Frey says the lot's owner has racked up a dozen public health violations, from open fires to drug debris, and that the encampment poses a serious public danger. But property owner Hamoudi Sabri, who has resisted city orders, insists that he allowed the camp because Minneapolis hasn't offered real solutions. He said, every victim deserves equal care. Every neighborhood deserves dignity. Until Minneapolis rejects displacement and embraces care, we will keep reliving the same tragedies. Neighbors say the encampment has fueled fear and violence for months, while most of its remaining residents have refused offers of shelter. This is complicated, Dr. Lindsay. It's very complicated. And again, I'm not blaming Brian Kilmeade for what happened, but there's a disposition we have toward the homeless that allows a certain level of indifference to be normalized, and we see it in places like Minneapolis and anywhere else you could probably name in the country for sure. What if I want to move away from Kilmeade just for a second? We'll come back to him, but when you hear about these encampments, when you hear about the violence, when you hear about the desperation, what do you think?
I think the owner of that lot has a lot of points regarding our lack of care, our indifference. It's systemic that we don't care. It is deeply heartbreaking. We're not asking questions about why people would refuse services. We're not asking about what kinds of services would actually be helpful. We're not talking to unhoused people about their needs. It is about displacing them. We don't talk about the vulnerability of unhoused people to violence, or very likely to be victims of violent acts, more so than perpetrators of that, and that many killings have happened this week, most of which have not been caused by unhoused people. And so I think that there's an easy way to demonize people who are outside of what we understand as people worthy of our care and of our respect, and people without homes in a nation that's so built on property and accumulation, folks who are outside of that and already struggling with something, whether it's living with addiction, living with mental illness. We have completely divorced them from our sense of who deserves care and who deserves humane treatment.
Yeah, and that kind of disposability, that politics of disposability that we sort of engage when it comes to the poor, to the Black, the brown, the trans, and we're going down the list, mentally ill, drug addicted, etc. It's just becoming more and more prominent in the Trump administration, but it's also important for people to understand, and you talk about this in your work, I try to talk about it in mine, that this is a long-term, this is not new. This is not a new development. This is baked into late capitalism. It's baked into the United States, this kind of disposability of the vulnerable that I find stunning. But let me go back to Brian Kilmeade for just a moment. And I'm going to play this clip just one more time for people, because again, it's so disgusting. It's so disturbing that I need y'all to hear it one more time.
Billions of dollars to mental health and the homeless population. A lot of them don't want to take the programs. A lot of them don't want to get the help that is necessary. You can't give them a choice. Either you take the resources that we're going to give you, or you decide that you're going to be locked up in jail. That's the way it has to be now.
Or involuntary lethal injection or something. Just kill them.
Yeah, Brian.
Now, it's also important to note here, Dr. Lindsay, before we go back to Brian Kilmeade's awful comment, the person on the left, the gentleman on the left, I mean, he also basically said, if you're homeless, we're going to lock you, we're going to incarcerate you. Right? If you don't take the resources we give you, you get incarcerated.
Yeah.
You know it's bad when someone's comments are so disgusting that that locking up homeless people for being homeless, it seems like the humane.
It seems like the humane.
Right, like door number one didn't seem so bad. You know, how are these conversations
so absurdly inhumane?
Yeah,
that's why, like, I don't know who out the process. They seem like villains in a movie. Like, it doesn't seem real that people feel this way. One of the people I write about in my book, I dedicated my first book to a little girl named Relisha Rudd, who went missing in Washington, D.C. in 2014. And one of the things that I talk about in that book is that she was living in a homeless shelter in D.C. and there were all these fears about her being in the shelter because of the failure of the shelter to protect residents, what was happening in the shelter. There's so many things about shelter life that we don't discuss. We just think of it as a place to be housed, to be warehoused. We can start to think about some shelters as carceral sites. And she's taken outside of that because someone thought they were attempting to protect her, and she's still harmed. And so all of these different spaces become spaces of harm. And so when you just say, if you're not going to take the services that we're offering, whether those services are effective, healthy, caring, just, or well-resourced, that if you're not taking those, then we're just going to put you into the carceral system so we can, extract labor from you, have you disconnected further from community, and only exacerbate many of the issues that our unhoused community is living
Right.
with.
Or just kill you.
That's slow death. There's
Right.
involuntary murder.
And Brian's like, oh no, let's just kill him. I've known Brian Kilmeade a long time. We worked together at Fox News, maybe 20 years ago now, 19 years ago. Time goes fast. And no, you're old. I hear it. I see it in your. I see the.
Oh,
I saw your face.
Nothing. This is boo. No.
I hate y'all because they're gonna take your side. But Brian always came off as the liberal. He was always the reasonable one on the morning show. There's Steve Ducey and what's her name was on there too. She what is her name? She eventually left after suing Roger Ailes for harassment. But there's just so much there. I was actually surprised that Brian did that. Maybe because of the liberal facade from the past. I don't know, but I thought that was far even for him. What I also and by the way, to be fair, or at least thorough in my job, he gave an apology. He said on Sunday, quote, "I wrongly said they should get lethal injection. I apologize for that extremely callous remark. I'm obviously aware that not all mentally ill homeless people act as the perpetrator did in North Carolina, and that so many homeless people deserve our empathy and compassion."
He said, "Just kill him." He said, "Just kill them."
Yeah. Here's what I wonder about. How did the FCC justify going all out on Jimmy Kimmel, for saying that, Charlie Kirk was one of them, right? Or, kind of MAGA person. Whether you agree with it or not, how is that worthy of shutting down networks, getting people fired, losing jobs, shutting down affiliates? I mean, a full-fledged political intervention by the FCC, but saying go kill homeless people isn't a sign of it's not worthy of outrage and some kind of a state intervention. I mean, how do we justify that? I don't get it.
We don't. I think that's the thing. We're not justifying that. We're calling a spade. But I do think it's a matter of who's saying what and what message. That is the speech that will be protected. That is the narrative that will be protected, will be amplified, will be, celebrated. I wouldn't be surprised if there's more dialogue around what he said that ignores the apology that happened, but really jumps down on what happens, what we need to do with the unhoused population that will be deeply unjust and deeply uncaring, and frankly be more cause for more harm to unhoused people.
It's so hypocritical. It's so blatantly unfair. And the thing about the Trump administration, from what I can see, is that they don't care. They're like, yeah, we play by different rules. Yeah, we're going to do what we're going to do. Yeah.
Wasn't that jacket that Melania had during his first term, the "I don't care" jacket or something? Or I mean, they don't. Their policies tell us they don't. The rhetoric tells us they don't. Who they're supporting, who they're amplifying, who they're targeting. All of these things tell us that there is a complete lack of care. In fact, it's intentionally cruel.
And I think that's right. In many ways, the cruelty is the point. And that's the thing that I had to come to understand, is that the cruelty is in fact the point. All right. Let's get to one more story, and then I'm going to go. I said it, I was going to only do one story, but Come up. Look, come up. I'm sick, but we rocking. We rocking. I'm gonna try and get to bed and get my 3 hours, like the doctor recommended. Ooh,
I'm sure it was more than 3.
Ain't that what the doctor said? Get your 3. Ooh, I found a Halls too. We're about to kill this Halls. That's gonna get us through. Anyway, let's talk about what's happening in Georgia. The Georgia Supreme Court has declined to hear Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis's appeal over her removal from the election interference case against former President Donald Trump and his alleged co-conspirators. In a narrow 4-3 ruling, the justices let stand a lower court's decision to disqualify Willis because of a romantic relationship with Nathan Wade. He, of course, is a special prosecutor that was appointed to the case. She appointed him to the case, to be clear. Justice Andrew Pinson, writing for the majority, said the appeal, quote, does not raise a question of gravity that warrants our further review. This means that the case will now be referred to the Prosecuting Attorney's Council of Georgia, whose executive director, Peter Skandalakis, will decide whether to appoint a new prosecutor or potentially take the case himself. Willis said she disagreed with the decision but respected the process, adding, I hope whoever is assigned will have the courage to do what the evidence and the law demand. President Trump called the ruling, quote, a great decision, and again labeled the prosecution a rigged case. His attorney, Steve Sato, said Willis's disqualification was proper and deserved. Trump and 18 co-defendants were indicted in Fulton County in August 2023 on racketeering charges tied to efforts to overturn Georgia's 2020 election results. Trump lost Georgia that year to Joe Biden, but he carried the state again in 2024 against then Vice President Kamala Harris. And now Georgia taxpayers could be on the hook for millions of dollars in Trump's legal bills. That's because Governor Brian Kemp signed a bill into law earlier that year that allowed criminal defendants to recover attorney fees if a prosecutor is disqualified from the case. For now, the future of the state case, Trump's 4th criminal indictment, count them 1, 2, 3, 4, rests on who will take it over. I don't have a lot of thoughts here, Dr. Lindsay, but I'm actually okay with someone else taking over the case. I don't even want the appearance of impropriety here. And I think no matter how awful or disgusting the defendant might be, they deserve a fair trial. They deserve a trial free from any contradictions, any conflicts of interest, etc. My fear, though, is that while that might be right, and again, I'm open to hearing a legal case from legal experts next week if they want to come on and tell me why, this was a bad decision. But regardless, I'm worried that no one will step up and do the right thing. It seems that Trump has controlled the judiciary so much that I don't even expect a fair trial anymore on the Trump side of things. How about you?
I'm right there with you. I'm not expecting much. I also a legal expert beyond my years of watching, as Rose Nyland would say, la law. And of course,
that's me too. That's me too now. That's my expertise.
Yes, and SVU, of course. But I do think that any semblance of impropriety, anything that could make it seem like this wasn't just based on evidence and just based on what happened in Georgia in the 2020 election, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it procedurally. What I'm not okay with is that same kind of pit fear that you have around if someone's going to step forward, what the judiciary is going to do. It seems very, very unlikely that the judiciary is going to come with what would be necessary to hold Trump accountable for what happened in Georgia in 2020. It just does not seem like to me, given what we're seeing and all of the steps that this case has taken since 2023. And this disqualification or upholding of the disqualification of Fani Willis feels like a long line of things where, Black women in particular are in Trump's crosshairs, and there is this vile and virulent repudiation and derision of Black women in these positions. right? He sees Black women as an enemy to his agenda. And in many ways, whether we're talking about an electoral force, our voices as journalists, shout out to Karen Atia, like people who have been calling out and naming things and saying things and standing up against the administration, despite our lives and livelihoods being on the line, that Fani Willis, for what as complicated as this case is in its entirety, it feels like another Black woman who was being dismissed in that. And very few people move with the fortitude of Black women with regards to the Trump administration.
That's for sure. And even if I agree with the Fani Willis decision, one of the questions is always, when is the law applied? When are these standards applied? Because there's a whole lot of prosecutors with a whole lot of conflicts that don't get brought up. So I'm fascinated by that. And I'm glad you mentioned Karen Atia, of course, the New York Times Global Opinions editor.
Washington Post.
I'm sorry. Washington Post Global, I forgot DC. The Global Opinions editor of the Washington Post, and a friend of mine, and a friend of the show. She was on here a few months ago to launch her online course after Columbia shut her down. She now has been let go of from the Washington Post. She'll be on here next week to talk about her story and talk about what happened and to break that all down. But in the meantime, we're going to keep our eyes glued to all of this. Dr. Lindsay, I know I said we had to go, but I got one more thing for you to look at. One more story for you. And I'm just going to show you this and see what this means to you.
Oh gosh. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh dang.
All right. So for those of you who are too cool or too cultured or too smart or too politically engaged to know what that image is, this is an image of former Rockefeller founder, mogul, entrepreneur, educator, dental model, Dame Dash.
Stop.
Too far? Okay, fine. Dame Dash on his recent appearance on The Breakfast Club. I'm a huge Dame Dash fan. I'm a huge Dame Dash supporter from old school. You know, I really believed in Dame and Jay and Biggs when they built Rockefeller Records. I love the story. If you're just tuning in, forgive me for having a call drop in my mouth. I'm very, very sick. I'm just trying to not cough on the mic. And over the course of the last 20 years, I've just watched, or really 30 years now, I've sort of watched all of them go in their separate directions, their separate lives. And I'm always rooting for everyone to be successful who deserves it. And when I saw Dame Dash on The Breakfast Club last night, or yesterday, and I watched the memes and I watched the jokes and I watched the conversations and I listened to the quotes and I watched the entire interview twice. I got so many feelings about this, but mostly disappointment and sadness. And I wanted to know what you took. I don't know if you got to see the whole interview, but I'm sure you saw at least the social media outcry from it. What'd you make of it?
Ooh, this one's tough, and I haven't been a fan for years, so I'll say that quite transparently. Although there are moments where I think Dame had some, insights. He clearly was in the industry and meaningful to what we think about as way we think about hip hop looks very different without Dame's impact. And that's, I think, undeniable, right? But this also reminds me, sadly, rest in peace to Irv Gotti, but of like a lot of stuff he was doing in the last few years before his death with regards to like how he was talking about Ashanti and women. Like there are things that you're doing that make it very difficult to reckon with the legacy that you're trying to assert and affirm and remind people that you're a part of and what your impact has been. And then you become the laughing stock because you're saying such absurd and ridiculous things in such, it's mind blowing that it's almost, I'm like, are you this smart and dumb simultaneously? Like, you know culture. You know, I'm like, how do you not know how this is going to read? And that lack of self-awareness, that ego that is so present with him, that in one way made him extraordinarily successful for many years, is the same thing that is tarnishing his own legacy in this moment. And his consistent kind of engagement with whatever he thinks manhood is and masculinity is has always been deeply troubling. But I think it was on display in a way for a lot of people, even folks who like him, to be like, dog, what are you talking about here? And what are you doing?
And that's the part that I think really took me out. Rolando said, right, that same ego put him in that tan suit. It was such a stunning thing. And again, when I say I was a fan of Dame Dash, I mean from way back. You know, over the last decade in particular, I've become increasingly disappointed with his public persona, his public performance. I don't know Dame Dash, by the way. I was supposed to interview him at A3C conference maybe a decade ago now, and he couldn't make it because of some legal troubles. He wasn't allowed to leave California. I won't say what they were, but he announced that publicly, so I feel comfortable saying what he announced publicly. So never get an opportunity to meet Dame Dash, so I can't speak to him any personal interactions with him. But when I watched that Breakfast Club interview, it seemed to encapsulate so many of the things that people say about him publicly and privately. I was really disappointed. So there's a way that they were all in on a joke, and they were kind of being silly and sarcastic and insulting each other, especially him and Dame Dash and Charlamagne. I thought there was some entertainment to it. It got a little too meta with the "you're interrupting me, you're interrupting me, no, you're interrupting me." Like that got a little like annoying and distracting. But when they got into the substance of the argument, Dame was on there, from what I could see, to set the record straight, to prove he wasn't broke. And I don't know if Dame Dash is broke or not, and I don't care. And also, his idea of broke is very different than mine. Like I'm broke, like broke. Like when I say I'm broke, I mean like I ain't got two nickels to rub together. I mean like if you took all the money in the world and dumped it out, that'd be me. Like that's my conception of broke. You know, in billionaire talk and in millionaire talk, sometimes broke is what your assets are. It's, I only got $1 million cash. I only got $5 million cash. I only got whatever. All those kinds of things. So it's a different kind of conversation that I don't feel qualified to even be a part of. So I won't speak to his money, but the idea of feeling the need to come on to defend the fact that you're not broke or to explain how you're not broke, if that is indeed his purpose for coming, to me was a little bit weird. And then the second thing, and this is what you're getting at with the masculinity thing, he kept calling Charlamagne a girl. One point, he's like, I'm not going to listen to you. You're a woman, right? And he called himself, but in the other 15 times, he basically implied it. You know, he called him effeminate. He called him a man. He said, you're not the proper message of or representation of masculinity. Then by the end, all bets were off. He was just like, you're gay. You're gay. You're gay. You're gay. How old are we? What year is this? It felt disappointing to me. Utopian shitposter said the gays catching strays for what? And yeah, Henry Jackson's right. He called him a bald-headed girl. That's what Dame Dash called Charlamagne. Charlamagne, to his credit, took it. He laughed it off. He thought it was absurd, and he treated it as such. If you're Dame, why do you do this? You know, like, is it that you have such a warped idea of what the public thinks is okay, or do you just not care anymore?
I don't know what it is. I wish it were. It felt so immature. It felt so ego-driven, and that so much of who he views himself as a boss, who I don't work for people, you're not a man if you're this, is so tied up in such a toxic notion of personhood. Forget masculinity, just like who I have to be and show up in this moment. I'm not broke. I'm this, I'm that, and you're not this. And he's putting himself and pitting himself against these other folks to somehow claim an identity that I'm like, this feels like a prison for you, my guy. Like, and when you do that slide into femphobia, right, and misogyny, that of course is that quick slide into homophobia that comes right then, blatant of this, that, you know, Charlamagne's response, from what I understand, is like, so what if I, like, it was like very, I mean,
Yeah.
What does that even mean? Like,
Right.
right?
Like, what is your issue with black gays? Like, why do you
Right,
care?
like, why do you care?
He's
Right?
like, you're not a black man, you're gay. And he's like, wait, black men can't be gay? What are you
Black
talking
man
about?
gay, like this thing of for it still being irreconcilable, it absolutely felt like a conversation that I would have with certain folks 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And the conversation would have been terrible then too. I'm not trying to make it seem as though that's not the case then too. Like homophobia didn't suddenly become wrong, but it's like you are really out of step even with the platforms you're going on and speaking in the way that you do in an attempt to tell people I'm here because I'm not broke and I'm a real man. And this is the way that you're defining it. It was just such a crucial misstep. And he's had a lot of those in the last decade or so.
Well, one of the big things about it was the boss talk, right? That was 10 years ago. That's what made that episode classic. And what made this one an instant classic is also him, again, reasserting the fact that he is a boss. For him working a 9 to 5, getting a paycheck from someone else. He said calling someone boss is like calling someone daddy. It's unmanly that your children shouldn't be proud of you or proud that you have a boss or that you go to work every day. He mocked them for having a 9 to 5.
I mean, could you imagine having worked for him at some point and that's how he views you?
That's the thing I never understood about that. It's like, having a boss makes you just whack, but you employ people. So, I mean, that's a hell of a sales pitch. Come here so that I can be the very thing that you should resent. Be a loser, call me daddy, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's wild. So I never understood it. And I was hoping 10 years later he'd have a little different perspective on that. But he seems to have doubled down on it. And it seems to me at this moment, not just in like capitalism, but this moment in internet culture, where so much of LLC Twitter believes this. I feel like the same people who go to Trump, the same men who go to Trump, particularly black men who go to Trump, the same people who are always talking about capital in a certain way are the ones online backing Dame, saying Dame was right. And that we just didn't listen to his lessons, and we should have been listening yesterday with our notepads out as he taught, which as he suggested, rather than criticizing him. What do you make of that? Particularly this idea of the relationship between, or that Dame represents an idea and a thing.
I mean, it's a mix of arrogance and delusion for me. And I think that is, LLC Twitter, X or whatever, or these kind of conversations that happen, we're so tethered to capitalism and its promise and this idea that these folks who achieve something within that, and he's literally telling you he has a negative view of people who work for him, of workers, of laborers, of which most of us are, who are in these extractive dynamics with people who are like, I'm the boss and these other people call me dad. I mean, it's just harrowing to see then people say that's a great thing, we should take lessons from that, that's how I want to move. That's how we continue to move in a way that suggests that we ain't getting free from capitalism until we have a robust critique of what those values are that you're saying should be.
And that's why Dame Dash to me is an interesting part of the conversation. The other piece, of course, is that he announced that he was the chairman of Revolt yesterday. Revolt, however, said he is not the chairman of Revolt. DeTavio sent out an email, a company-wide email saying, hey, just some updates. DeTavio Samuels, by the way, is the CEO of Revolt. He's also a good brother of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. I know your favorites. He sent out a note saying, hey, if there were changes in the company, I'd let you know. I'm responding to this because it's caused some unrest. Again, being clear, the news that Dame Dash was chairman, even temporary chairman for a month, sent the company in a tailspin. People did not want that to happen. Mm-hmm. But he said it's not true. It was never true. And the articles that say it were true fabricated quotes from me. So I don't know what the truth is or where the truth is. Again, I'm not saying Dame Dash was lying. I suspect Dame Dash was giving bad information. I don't think Dame Dash was lying. But regardless of what the truth is, that's pretty bad when you go on the biggest platform around for our culture, saying that you're announcing that you're the chairman of Revolt and that you have a comeback story, that you won, that you were Michael Corleone in Godfather 2, and that you played weak and then killed all the families. This is his metaphor. And that Cameron, who he's been beefing with, is now an employee. He's Cameron's boss. He did all of that only for the network to say none of this is true. No. Yeah, I'm like, you mentioned Rose Nyland. I mean, is this one of those things where you think Bob Hope is your father? Is this one of those things where you pretend Bob Hope is your father until like it, so that as kind of a coping mechanism? Are you delusional, or are you telling the truth, or are you lying? I mean, all these things are possible. Again, I don't want to pin anything negative on Dame Dash's jacket with certainty. I'm just saying this didn't look good. And so when you add all that together, the insults, the homophobia, what I thought just wasn't a great interview. It wasn't his best interview. Like on the first one, he was in complete control. And whether you disagree with Dame or not, he was rhetorically in control. This time it felt like Charlamagne was getting the upper hand on him at every turn. You know, Dame Dash said, you need to, you know, I think you're being paid to do this. And he's like, I think you need to get paid to do anything. You know, to Dame, you know, I mean, he was hitting Dame with like counters that were pretty funny. He called him Debt Dash. He said he started a new record label called Debt Jam. You know, again, I don't want to make fun of people who are poor or broke. You know, but I think this is more about getting at Dame's ego.
Yeah.
And just rhetorically, it didn't look like Dame was doing a good job of holding it up. Then he was talking about potentially fighting Charlamagne. He was saying it as a hypothetical, like, if I were to do this, you wouldn't do anything about it. But that's still, in hood life, that's still a threat on some level. Or it's an assertion that I'm more masculine than you and that I can beat you up, right? Or I don't run from fights, you do, which is what he said. All of this is part of the mix. I don't know. I don't even know if I have a question as much as I just have an observation. I want to know what you think about, like, how do I make sense of all of this?
You don't. I mean, there's so much that's an unknown, right? Like, I don't know if he's Delulu. I don't know if he just got, as you said, the most generous read is that he got bad information. That's the most generous read we could have. I'm inclined not to be so generous, but I think that on the other end of that, it's delusion, it's arrogance, it's ego, it's trying to have this one up, trying to have these comebacks when you know somebody's getting better things. You know that in this moment, someone else is getting the best of you, someone else is getting the laughs, someone else is getting and they're getting the laughs at your expense. That you need a trump card and you pulled out a card that you thought you had, or a card you thought, I don't know, folks wouldn't check that deep into, or that publicly, maybe because of your history in the industry, that perhaps Ottavio might not have come out and said that in a public way. Like,
of course, right.
It's leaning on a lot of currency that you think you have, but that currency, again, is deeply rooted in you and in your ego. It's just like, bruh, you're Delulu, and I don't get it. And this interview was such a bad look for you. It doesn't make sense. It's sad for those who still are invested in you and what it is you think you're building right now. And it is not about making fun of folks who are broke or don't have money. That is so many folks. So like, that's damn near everybody in this moment. And there was a real way to talk about where he is, if he wanted to be honest about where he is, in a way that I think would have been relatable. And I think about, he has things to share about how he helped build an incredible legacy within the rap industry, within popular music more broadly. There's such a great story to tell there. And I feel like that's not the story that we're getting. What is self-aggrandizing, what is assuaging certain things that he feels publicly insecure about, are the things that we're getting responses from.
I agree with you again. Utopian shit poster, making fun of broke people was so played. Yeah, it is. It's not cool. Even
we all broke.
Right.
Who ain't broke? Like, what are we talking about?
Exactly. And when he says, I bet you my house bigger than yours, it's like, come on, man. And even Charlamagne left, like, come on, how old are you? Like,
how old are you?
You know, and again, I don't want to turn this into a bash Dame Dash thing, because I just mainly because I'm worried about his how healthy he is right now.
Yes, sure. And that's a care and an ethic of care that you extend to people that I'm deeply appreciative that you do, comrade. And I, on the other hand, was just like, this was ridiculous. And it is a pattern of ridiculousness. And
Yeah.
I hope he has people, which is the thing is, when your ego leads that much, when you're this self-aggrandizing, it is rare that you have people around you who are going to hold you accountable and help you get to the resources you may need if in fact you do need help.
Yeah.
That makes it really challenging.
I think that's right. Antoine Foster said hustle culture is a lie. I think that Dame Dash in some ways exemplifies that, and I think that that's part of the danger. You know, I hope Dame Dash lives a long and healthy and happy life. But I think my bigger concern is less about Dame and more about all the people in our community and in our country who have bought into hustle culture, who have bought into the idea that you rise and you grind, and you know your value is measured by how much money you have or how much money even your family has, which was Dame's point, the family, not the individual, which I sort of appreciated, but the end goal to me was still problematic. You know, I'm concerned about the obsession with very narrow and dangerous and toxic even notions of masculinity. There's so many things that came out of that conversation that I found deeply disturbing. But there was one really good thing in the interview, and I don't know if you saw it, but his OG came up at the end and talked about his wife dying. His wife had died 5 months earlier, and he talked about what it meant to care for her and be by her side, even at the worst moments. He talked about enduring love and sustaining love, and he sort of offered a different conception of manhood that was tied to loyalty and commitment to his partner, which I thought was sort of beautiful. Again, I'm sure we can have critiques of his stuff too at some level. I mean, anybody who hangs with Dame that tight probably merits critique as such. But what he was saying about, you know, being there until the day his wife died and how he's carrying it now. And I noticed he was still wearing his wedding ring as well. Like there were just some things on it that stood in just stood in such sharp contrast to the Dame interview. It's like the last 16 minutes were so much more interesting and beautiful to me than the first hour. I thought it really, again, sort of put a spotlight on just how troublesome Dame's current position is. Anyway, one more question for you. Does this how do you think Jay-Z, what do you think Jay-Z does when he watches this interview? Ain't no way you're gonna tell me Jay-Z don't watch this interview. So, and I don't know that Jay-Z didn't tell me that, but I'm just saying, like, if Jay-Z watches the interview, what does he say? What does he think?
You think he does? I mean,
yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm thinking he's somewhere with billionaires selling out, you know, black children, but that's a whole other conversation too.
You're not a Hovenger. I forgot.
You know, I think Jay pays him attention in about this much. Like, there's not a lot he could cash out on in terms of the attention that Jay has to pay him. I think Jay gets reports from folks of him of what this is. Oh, check this out, and has a laugh.
Yeah.
It goes
Yes.
back doing what other billionaires do. And you know, that's a whole other conversation for another night when you are feeling much better. But I think he gets the tidbits. I think he gets the snippets that I get, since it's not something I think he'd be interested in consuming, to just further prove, like, every time this man comes out with an interview, he proves exactly why I made the moves that I made, and I moved like I did.
And that's what I wondered. Like, is he like, look, see, is he like, yo, look, Bleak, I told you? Or is it more like, or is it like, yo, B, look at this clown, and they're laughing? Or is it more like sadness, like, damn, that was my man?
I think it could be a mix of those. I don't think it has to be one or the other. I think it's less of column 3 of the sadness. I think Jay's always been a shrewd businessman. I think Jay has been about his coin for a long time, and about what his notion of loyalty is, and what kind of legacy he wants to have. And I think he was very clear about who Dame was showing up as at a certain point, and made a decision. And I think he's probably pretty happy with the decision that he made, and pretty happy to show those of him who doubted that decision, questioned that decision, are critical of that decision. There's column A and there was path A and path B. And Path A has me at this table, and path B has me having to then come out here and like defend this guy saying these things. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
yeah.
I just always wonder when somebody's in your crew, you know, and then y'all don't rock with each other for a long time, like, and things fall out, you know, sort of how you carry that, even if you and the person aren't cool no more. And to be clear, wasn't calling Dame a clown. I just
No, but I think there are.
But I think that could be one way that Jay sees
right.
that behavior. Yeah, I actually think I think part of my sadness about this whole thing is I think Dame is actually cool. I think Dame is shrewd. I think Dame is smart. I think Dame is so talented. And I hate to see it playing out like this. That's what Cameron was saying. While him and Mace were also having a field day laughing about everything that's going down. But anyway, the Dame Dash thing is interesting. Someone said something here that I'm going to bring you back for next week to talk about if you're around, Dr. Lindsay. And that is,
is it Cardi?
Yes, it was the Cardi. It was the Cardi comment that I put up for a second, but they said, let's see if we give the same scrutiny, I guess, to yeah, it is. Let's see if we evaluate Cardi and her choices the same way. I'm guessing that the choices are her getting pregnant by Stephon Diggs. I don't see that as the same thing.
Okay.
I think
I'm
people
like try to make the connection. I mean, I know a lot of people have a lot to say about that. Like you said, we can definitely talk about that another night. There's a lot of people who have a lot to say about what's happening in Cardi's uterus.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at. Audi Osiris said caping for Kimmel, but not the victim of actual political violence, is insane. You know, Audi Osiris, I don't feel well, and I don't know if I really feel like getting into all the details of why this is a ridiculous comment. But Kimmel, to be clear, when it comes to Charlie Kirk, I'm not going to cape for Charlie Kirk. You're right. I don't think Charlie Kirk deserves caping. I don't think he deserves a kind of defense of his actions or his behavior. As I said a couple of days ago, I think on Monday's broadcast here on Night School, I hate that he was killed in the way that he was. I hate to live in a context where we don't have access to free speech. I don't want anyone to be killed for their political views. And just at the human level, I can't imagine what it would be like for one of my children, any of my children, all of my children, right, to turn on the television and see me killed and while giving a speech. I mean, it's awful. I can speak against the political violence. I can speak against how awful it was that we live in a country where that is normalized. I can do all that without pretending that Charlie Kirk wasn't a piece of shit. I don't owe him hagiography. I don't owe him. I don't have to pretend that I liked him. I don't have to pretend that he didn't do great harm in the world. I don't celebrate his death at all. I don't celebrate anyone's death. Well, I won't say anyone. I'm sure there are people whose death I celebrate, particularly people who are actively doing harm, etc. You know, I'm sure some of y'all who are talking to me like this were celebrating Saddam Hussein's death or Osama bin Laden's death. I'm not saying that he was those people. I'm saying that, you know, there are moments where we celebrate. When someone's actively killing people, sometimes you have to kill them in self-defense, and I don't lose sleep over it. But again, even then, you know, my heart doesn't go to the celebration phase. I'm not happy that Charlie Kirk was murdered. I actually hate that Charlie Kirk was murdered in the way that he was, or in any way, to be clear. I'm not wordsmithing. I don't want him to be killed at all. But it doesn't mean that I have to lose sleep over it. It doesn't mean that I have to pretend to cry. It doesn't mean that I have to believe that flags should fly at half-mast for it. I don't believe those things. People, you're entitled to believe what you want. But I don't believe that. I said the same thing a few weeks ago when Hulk Hogan died. People have a right to mourn Hulk Hogan. I know he was racist, and I have a right to say that. Why, you know, I don't have to. There's no window where I have to be quiet about that. There's no window where I have to pretend Charlie Kirk didn't say deeply harmful and hurtful things about Black women, about trans folk, about gay folk. I could go on down the list. I mean, he was tagging the children of George Floyd, as he was posting that George Floyd wasn't killed by the police officer, was killed by his own actions, despite the fact that the coroner report says something very different, that all the evidence says something different. And I could go on and on and on about Charlie Kirk, but what I'm caping for with Jimmy Kimmel is actually the same thing that you use the word caping, but what I'm caping for with Jimmy Kimmel and what I'm saying about Charlie Kirk is the same thing. It's what kind of world do we want to have? I would live in a world where Charlie Kirk can say the most awful things and he doesn't get shot down from 200 yards away. And I want to live in a world where Jimmy Kimmel can have critiques of our response to that crisis, and he doesn't lose his TV show. But I also want to live in a world where we don't pretend that Charlie Kirk and Jimmy Kimmel are the same thing. That's just the reality for me. Anyway, I hope I addressed that. I don't know if my brain's spinning a little bit from this cold, but I hope that all makes sense. Dr. Lindsay, I'm seeing so much I shouldn't say I'm shocked, because I'm not, but I'm deeply frustrated by the responses after the Charlie Kirk killing. If you feel up to it, what do you make of all of it?
Responses from everybody, just broadly,
or any part of this, really. Any part of this. What do you make of any part of this?
As someone who was and is on his professor watch list, who's been,
are you on the list too?
I am.
Oh, okay. Then that's great, right, to know.
Emailed rape and death threats that can be directly traced to my position on that. It is, and to believe someone made a lot of folks who I care about lives and broadly communities that I feel accountable to and am part of more difficult, more challenging, and more vulnerable to all kinds of rhetorical and material violence is a truth I have to tell. That's not something I'm going to lie. And the person who was doing that was extraordinarily harmful.
Yeah.
Does that mean that we have to talk about political violence in a way that we don't say, like, wow, why are we in a society where saying terrible things is something that gets you killed? I don't want to live in a society where that is true. I also don't want to live in a society that consistently makes the communities from which I come from, who I am accountable to, more vulnerable to harm. That matters deeply to me. That is who I put on a cape for. It's not a cape for Kimmel as much as it is a cape for, like, I'm putting on a cape against state of repression.
Right.
I'm putting on a cape for the ability for us to be able to have disagreements, but your disagreement can't be about my right to fucking exist. So I think that notion of caping is one that there are a lot of things I'll put on capes for, and one of them is not someone who made many people's lives damn near unlivable. I refuse to do that. You're not going to bully me into do that. You're not going to bully me into saying things. I can use his own words to make him sound exactly how he sounded in life.
Right.
He said that empathy is some new age concept, but all of a sudden we have to engage in empathy in a way or perform empathy in a way that would be incredibly disingenuous and dishonest. I don't think this political moment requires, in fact, we need a lot more honesty in this political moment. The requirement of dishonesty and disingenuous in response to someone who was harmful is unfathomable at a moment when we're seeing this level of state repression here and across the world.
It is stunning to me that we're even having
an influencer, for a podcaster, not even elected official. We're not talking about a state representative who was
right from Minnesota who shot
at her home. Usually America goes up for a family and a dog being killed. We ain't even have that. We don't even have that. But this man, because he is using rhetoric that reinforces narratives and ideas that have been very much so a part of the Trump administration and the MAGA movement more broadly is suddenly we have to all mourn and grieve, right? There's something I'm mourning and grieving in this moment, and it's not a loss of civility. It's a real fundamental loss of hope in any semblance of these systems coming to protect and care or serve us in any way. Any kind of hope I was having that we were getting closer or moving towards just and equitable things feels like we're moving farther and farther away day by day.
I think
that's what I'm mourning right now and grieving right now.
I think that's right. I think that's right. And that sense of grief needs space to be articulated. And I feel like it can't happen on mainstream media anymore. It can't happen in our political conversation. It can't happen in schools. I'm actually scared of however imperfect and fractured and fragmented this so-called democracy is. It's an even greater state of crisis now than it was even 4 years ago.
Yeah.
This is bad. And people, this is what many people were warning about with what the Trump administration would look like 2.0. Forget about the alternatives for a minute. I'm not, this isn't a you should have voted for Kamala argument. This isn't a you should have voted Green argument. I'm not getting into the political part of it. I'm simply saying for some of, or I'm not getting to the partisan part of it. What I'm saying is that for many people, I just heard so many people say, we've already seen Trump, how much worse can it get? And I'm saying, this is the worst.
It can get, and it's getting worse. I mean, that's the thing, right? Trump at 45 feels very different from Trump at 47, right? Like Trump 47. This feels and is really different. And if democracy, particularly for marginalized folks, Black folks, has always been on life support, right? Like it's always been. But it just feels like we've unplugged the machine and we're just kind of seeing if our vitals can push through. That's what it feels like right now, right? It's like, not because I believed in it. When you're on life support, the chances are already very, very minimal. But now we've said, well, let's see what they can do without the ventilator. Like, let's just let it rock. And minoritized people have been the heartbeat, have been the things, the vitality of any possibility of democracy in this country. It has always been Indigenous folks. It's always been Black folks. It's always been queer folks. It's always been trans folks. It's always been disabled folks. It's always been poor folks. It's always been those of us from the global South. Like, it's always been that. So now that you've taken the thing that we were like, all right, let's challenge it legally. Let's kind of mobilize and protest this way. Let's use our voices and our platforms, whatever those things are. All of those are being disconnected in this moment. And we have to figure out new ways to survive without that very thin cord that was connecting us to some crumble, some little crumb of what democracy might look like.
Yeah. I think your analysis is spot on, and that's the scary part. Chad just wrote in as we close out and said it hasn't even been a year. Michelle said the same thing. We're only 9 months in, and he's just getting started, unfortunately. I swear I thought we were like 3 years in, but 9 months is scary, yo. We got a long way to go. We got a lot of fighting to do. Anyway, Dr. Lindsay, thank you so much for joining me as always. Everybody, that is it for Night School tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Thank y'all for hanging in there with me. Forgive all my weird sounds and noises. I'm just trying to stay healthy and stay alive here. I'm going to get myself some rest before my 5 a.m. flight. Go run these streets and speak before I come back and do it all over again. I appreciate y'all. I appreciate everybody who's been part of Night School. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're so inclined, hit the join button and become a monthly subscriber to the channel. Also, if you don't want to do that, you can also support the channel in other ways, specifically Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. Think about hitting that button right now. Go in there and dropping something. It could be $1, it could be $1 million, it could be anything in between. There is no amount too little, no amount too small that will help us build and sustain this channel. But of course, it would be wonderful if everybody watching right now were to drop $5. Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. If everybody watching right now were to drop $5, we would be able to meet our financial goals for the month, to pay bills, to pay employees, etc. So please consider everybody dropping $5 on Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. The information's on the screen. But if you cannot, no amount is too small. Please drop that dollar. Please drop that 50 cents, whatever it is. We're here for it. We can use it, and we appreciate it more than you could ever imagine. All right, y'all. See y'all later. Peace.